Good morning, guys, from Yonkers Voice. Once again, we are here with a new candidate to Yonkers Council President, Mr. Ron Matten. Matten? My accent, Matten. Well, but before we go on the interview, I want to make it clear to all of you that Yonkers Voice does not endorse or oppose any candidate. Every single candidate to public office in the city of Yonkers or around, or county or state, are very welcome on Yonkers Voice platform. Our interest is to inform you, the people, so you can make an informed decision. If you are running and you want to be on our show, contact us, yv.support@yonkersvoice.com. So again, yv.support@yonkersvoice.com. Reach out, tell us what you're doing, tell us what you're running for, send us a palm card if you have one, and let's set up that interview. Again, our interest is to inform the people so the people can make a decision about who should they vote for. It's important to make an informed decision. Ron, thank you for taking the time and sitting with us today to inform the people, to talk to the people. Let us know who are you, what you stand for, how you think you're going to make our city a better place.
Well, Ru, first I want to start by thanking you for allowing me this venue. I've been watching Ru for at least a year now, and always a good interview and good questions. So I appreciate you giving me the time to be here.
Actually, we met some time ago when we had the Sandwich War. We showed up
at Lake Avenue, the Morleys over there, and Georgette Love provided us with
that's right.
Some great sandwiches.
That's right. But now let's go to what we came here for today. I see lots of people running, Ron. Okay, this primary, it's a primary like I never seen before. Lots of people after the same position. And what's going to make me vote for a person, B or C or D, it's what do they stand for? Why are they running for? So tell me what you're standing for, or better yet, why you're running for, and what you're standing for.
Well, first off, I want to say that I'm the Republican nominee, and I don't have a primary, so I'm guaranteed to be on the November 2nd ballot. We have a number of other candidates. I think there are 5 now. They're up to 5 on the Democratic ticket. So I'll wait to see who my opponents are come June. But I'm the only candidate that has 30 years operations experience. I've been working in facilities and operations management for the last 30 years. I've managed staff from 250 up to 300, all the way down to 10. I started with a staff of 10. My last staff was 250, working for City University of New York. So I understand what somebody like Anthony Landy or Tom Meyer has to deal with in putting together their budgets, in managing their staff, in managing their overtime. So as council president, I can work with them. I maybe help them understand some things that they haven't seen, or they can help me understand in which ways their budget works. And this will allow us to have a better symmetry between council and the executive offices. If you look at our current council makeup, we've got people from business, we've got a CPA, we've got some community activists, but we don't have anybody with the depth of experience that I have. And I've decided that's why I want to run.
But tell us exactly, what is the big difference between you and the other candidates? Look, when I vote, sometimes people don't vote for the right reasons. They vote for whoever they like personally. They don't vote based on record. They don't vote based on experience. So for me to vote for you, I need to understand exactly the difference and say, okay, well, Ron is the person.
The difference is I am running on my experience. I have a bachelor's in finance, I have a master's in public administration. I'm working on my second master's in data analytics, which I've suspended for the campaign. As I said, 30 years experience in operations, and I've managed large staffs. So I know what it is. I've worked for the town of Greenwich. The town of Greenwich has a different socioeconomic demographic than we do, but many of the principles in managing money are similar, and many of the principles should be followed.
But when it comes down to people, maybe lots of folks that are watching don't understand all that you say. Yes, you work here, you work there. But what are you going to do for the city that is different than the others? What are your priorities? What are the things that you're going to address first? Where do you think it's the most serious issue in Yonkers that you can tackle? You know, things like that, that people can relate to.
Okay. So the majority of my experience is dealing in the education markets. I've worked K through 12s, and I've worked in higher ed. I'm currently on the Yonkers School Construction Board, which is, we're building the new school at the St. Denis site. So I'm able to take that experience and understand what's involved in the budgets, put the best parts of that forward, find the fat in the budgets. Again, we put forth budgets at the end of the budget cycle. That money gets raked into the reserve funds. Right now, Yonkers Board of Education will pass a bond. The city, the taxpayer, is on the hook for that cost of that bond, and any grant reimbursements goes back to the district. So I'm looking to bring transparency into the budgets, so the taxpayer and the residents of Yonkers, who may not pay as much taxes, can get the most for their money.
Crime in Yonkers, school and school formula, homeless, jobless.
So let's take crime in Yonkers. Right now, the state legislature, I'm opposed to some of the new reforms. I don't think they did what they were expected to do. The no bail law, as well as some of the other court reforms, really aren't working at this point. Other problems that we have, I'm an advocate of broken windows. I know many people in the last year and a half, 2 years, have been against the broken window policy, but I think it worked well. Again, I'm not for stop, question, and frisk, but I am for safer streets, and we can do that through community policing. David Dickens, a Democrat, had a great community policing program that he instituted. New York City just got rid of CompStat, which I think was a mistake. I think Yonkers can do a similar program to CompStat, which would help us identify where in the city that we have the most crime, and then we can put those resources. Homelessness, I think we've got...
Before you go to homeless, let's talk a little bit about the crime. What you just said goes very much in line with what the Yonkers Police Commissioner, Mr. John Mueller, said. You know, community policing, precise policing, they know who the clients are. Have you ever spoken to him about this?
No, I have not. I've had some experience with policing and some experience with public safety, as that was one of the organizations that I managed. And it really is important to be involved in the community and have the outreach, because people aren't going to come and let you know the problems unless they feel safe in doing so. That also means protecting our immigrant community, so they don't feel that they're going to be violated in any way.
So now let's go to the other topic before I cut you off.
Okay. Homelessness?
Yes?
All right, so we do have a homeless problem. As I'm not the only candidate who's going to state this, but the area of homelessness is in the basket of the county to solve. However, there are a lot of good public-private partnerships that the city of Yonkers can move towards um, that will help with homelessness. Greystone is an organization that helps with homelessness. There's several housing organizations out there that help with homelessness. If we make sure that our grant money is going in the right places, that'll go a long way to have the private partnerships work with homeless. West Hat is another great organization within Yonkers that has been building affordable and low-income housing to help with homelessness. I'm on the board of the YMCA, and we have a number of folks from West Hat who are staying in the Y. So these are all great programs that work in conjunction, public and private together, to benefit the community.
Now, as you know, we are live and we have lots of people watching, and there is a question for you. This question comes from Mary Dimri Chiton Walker. This is what she asks. What other issues are you involved in, and how proactive are you in helping to solve issues with our community?
Okay, as I previously stated, I'm on the board at the Yonkers YMCA. When I was 16 years old, my father had a stroke, and the Y was very important to our family in kind of getting us back on track and helping my father get back on track with his health. So I was afforded the opportunity last year to become a board member. I'm working with the Y on some facilities projects. As well, I am on the Yonkers School Construction Board, which I mentioned previously, and we are looking to build a new school for St. Denis, at the St. Denis site.
Okay. Now, Mary also adds, as a community, it's our issue to solve. As a human being, it's our issue to solve. She makes a point. Regardless if we are elected or not, as a human being, we should be part of the solution.
Well,
I don't think she's pointing this to you. She's making a general statement. Now, she adds this. Can you make sure the budget fits the needs of the homeless?
So again, the budget component is the county obligation. So everyone who pays Yonkers taxes, Yonkers property taxes, pays a portion of that to the county. So the county solves that. The county is supposed to solve that homeless problem, which they have not. So again, I think that it's a public-private partnership is what Yonkers city government can do and foster those public-private partnerships to help solve some of that problem.
That's where I kind of tend to disagree with you. There is lots of people that live in Yonkers, people that have been living in Yonkers for dozens of years or more, that unfortunately, due to the hard economic situation, they can no longer afford to live in Yonkers. I know some folks that they work, but they sleep on their own cars. What solutions would you offer? Because look, the buildings that they are building become too expensive for us to afford. They say affordable, but affordable is relative. What might be affordable to you might not be affordable to me. They're building apartments that are one-bedroom apartments. Most people in Yonkers are people that have families, so those apartments are out because it doesn't fit their needs. But it seems like it fits other people's needs, the people from New York City, okay, that want to move up the river, live here, still be close to New York and travel back and forth. Is that the problem that you see, or to you it's fine?
So again, we have some of these developments that are being created. There is an affordable housing component. You said that's relative.
It's not relative to you, affordability is not. A Mercedes might be affordable to you, might not be affordable to me.
Well, correct. I'm not. What I'm saying is that we all have to live within our means, and in some ways, maybe what we earn does not meet our standard living arrangements. I've been fortunate in my life. I've been close to losing my apartment at times, but I've always managed to keep it. So again, there are community block grants that are available. If they're put in the right area, there are Westchester has an obligation on the homeless part. And then as far as affordable housing, there are developments going up that are low-income housing, and West Ave has been responsible for many of them within Yonkers.
What about those construction sites in Yonkers that supposedly should be employing people of Yonkers, but somehow they're not?
So again, I've heard this many times. It says, okay, we're going to build something and it all should be Yonkers. One is I do support having a project labor agreement, a PLA, when we're using Yonkers IDA funds. A PLA basically means that we're using union labor. It may not necessarily be a particular union. They have to be negotiated. You've got different unions that handle elevators. You've got different unions that handle wiring. So you have to give the developer a chance to negotiate those. But if the YDA is providing funds for that construction project, then we need to use union labor for it.
Now, talking about construction in Yonkers, let's just take a 5 minutes north of Yonkers, and we are going to stop at the marina.
Okay.
There is lots of conversation going on at the marina. Property has been bought, the old power station, power plant has been bought. There is plans to beautify it, and I have been inside the property, and I must tell you that it's going to be amazing.
Okay.
But the milestone, the blocking stone at this point is the parking lot. In order for that construction to start, the owners of the property must also build a parking lot that can accommodate the people or the businesses that are going to the old our power plant. The proposal is build a multi-level of a parking lot where the current parking lot is. People are not against the beautification of the old power plant, but some people are steadfast that no parking lot here. Parking are for people, and we want this the way it is. We want to come here and relax, fish, do whatever we want to do.
So
Where do you stand?
So the marina is one of the jewels of Yonkers. I've been there, and I'm not in favor of the parking lot at the marina. I think that again, this is one developer who has a plan, but this is also public land, and we have to be careful what we do in keep giving up our public land and developing at the cost of homeowners and developing at the cost of residents. So I've not actually seen the full plans of the parking lot, but on first blush, I'm really not in favor of taking public land and converting it to private use.
Now, I have a question here for Mr. Hector Santiago. Do you know Hector?
Hector the connector.
Hector the connector. Sometimes he doesn't connect,
Okay.
but most of the time he does.
All right.
I always have to tell him that because Hector is a good friend of mine, and we can joke around those things. No, Hector, you do connect, and I appreciate it. But this is what Hector asks from me. As a Republican, were you fond of Trump, or do you feel that he has tarnished the reputation of the Republicans?
So I know you had a moratorium on the topic of Trump, and it's a national topic, but
I had lots of moratoriums on Trump.
So look, there's a lot of things that the president did that I appreciate. The way he did it, I do not. I'm more in line with what you'd call a Rockefeller Republican, where I am the type of person who's going to reach across the aisle and try to work with my counterparts, whether they're Democrats, working family party members, or social democrats. I think we can find some place to work together. And while the federal government is at a 50-50 split and seems to be a little bit broken right now, I think we can move forward in Yonkers without that, because there are much kinder and gentler Democrats in the Republicans.
Now, can you now answer his question?
I think I did.
No, you didn't. His question is, as a Republican, were you fond of Trump, or do you feel that it has tarnished the reputation of the Republicans? So when you found yes or no...
I told you that I did not care for the man, his personality.
So you were not fond? Is that what you told me?
I'm not fond of him, but I appreciate many of the things that he did as a Republican.
The second question, that on the same question was, has he tarnished the reputation of the Republicans?
I think history will have to decide that.
No, we're not talking about history. I'm not interviewing history, I'm interviewing Ron. So the question to Ron is, do you think that his doing has tarnished the reputation of the Republicans?
Again, I can't speak to that. I don't feel it's tarnished me. I'm remaining a Republican, and I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the rest of the Republicans.
I have to tell you that I know and I have very good friends that are Republicans, and we continue to be good friends, and we will always be good friends. But they have no issues in telling me, yeah, Trump did hurt the Republican Party. Because we don't all think that way. What's going on is that a lot of Republicans leadership, they know that Trump controls many of the same people that are going to vote for the Republicans elected officials. And if Trump says don't vote, they're out of a job. Well, so the support is not because they like, it's because they want to secure their job.
So I have no worries about whether Donald Trump is going to come down and tell people to vote for the Yonkers City Council President or not to vote for the Yonkers City Council President.
Really?
Yeah.
What about all those Republicans right here in Yonkers that say, look, if you say anything wrong against Trump, they're not voting for me?
Well, I've told you how I feel. I've told you how I felt about the man, and I've told you how I felt about the policy.
And we are going to move on. We're not going to get stuck here. Police reform in Yonkers. Have you heard about it? How you feel about it?
Yeah, so one is I think the Yonkers Police Department is one of the best in the county. I think that while there is crime and we have very few numbers of police officers here, we do a great job with the numbers we have. I remember just last year, I think there was the gunshots in Larkin Plaza.
Last year?
Yeah, I think it was last year, and the great restraint on the Yonkers Police Force.
Getty Square.
Getty Square. The great restraint on the Yonkers Police Force who apprehended the perpetrator without issue. So I think we have a good police force. I think we have a good leadership. As I stated before, we can be more involved with community policing. That provides that hand into the neighborhood to really know what's going on. The cop on the street corner is much more helpful than the cop in the RMP. And I have a lot of friends who are police officers, and they've always carried themselves with the utmost dignity and respect.
Look, I also have lots of police friends in the police force, and I respect them and appreciate what they do. Yeah, once in a while we bump heads, but hey, it is what it is. But the police department in Yonkers is very much different than many police departments around the nation. We are talking about police reform, we are talking about things that need to be done in order to be in compliance with what Governor Cuomo has said. But I have seen that many of those things that Governor Cuomo asked were already being looked at to be implemented in the city of Yonkers before that. So I guess our commissioner had a vision, and he realized that certain things needed to change. Because Yonkers is a very different city. It's an inclusive, diverse and inclusive city. We have people of all colors, cultures and everything. And our police department needs to learn how to deal with our community. And I think they're doing a very good job, don't you?
I think so too, and I think the Yonkers Police Department is becoming more representative of the community. You know, you go back 20 years ago, we didn't have as diverse a department as we have now. So I think we've changed a lot. I remember when I was a kid growing up, I lived, as I stated to you, I lived in Valentine Gardens, which is right on Valentine Lane. So I was right on the New York City 50th Precinct border and the Yonkers border. And you didn't want to get pulled over by a Yonkers cop because they were pretty tough. Right now, I think, while they're still tough where they need to be, I think they've softened to the community and they're much more part of the community and understanding.
But you know, I spoke with the commissioner, I speak with the people on the street, and no one really has a problem with police officers being tough. Okay, I think most of the problem is with police officers being disrespectful of what they of the person they stop. And it seems like, I'm not saying there is no exclusions, it seems like in Yonkers, the police officers on the street are very respectful of the people they stop.
Absolutely, and I think it's a tough job, particularly with the reforms that have come out of Albany. It makes it even tougher. Right now, you put your hands in the wrong spot on somebody, trying to apprehend them, you could lose your pension and go to jail. So it's not an occupation that I would feel comfortable in, and I have a lot of respect for the people who are in that occupation and keeping us safe.
Black lives matter. They sure matter. White lives matter. Blue lives matter. Pink lives matter. Well, what I'm trying to say is everybody's lives do matter. But there is a movement about Black Lives Matter, and I personally understand what that move is about. Do you understand what that move is about?
So I have been fortunate being born with my current skin color.
Fortunate?
I believe that I've gotten some opportunities that other people may not have. I grew up, both my parents didn't graduate high school, let alone college, so I grew up very much in a lower to middle class environment. But because of the way I look, I do believe that I've gotten some passes in life. When you say all lives matter, I will counter that all lives matter when all lives really do matter. And I can see, I've lived in different places. I lived down in Texas for a while, and it's a much different vibe, if you will. Racism is much, I'm not going to say racism is alive in Texas, but racism is much more tolerated in other places of the country. And people are much more likely to be quiet about it in polite company.
But when you say racism is much more tolerated in Texas, you talk about white to blacks, right?
It's again, racism doesn't necessarily have to be white to black.
No.
It doesn't necessarily have to be white to Asian, or there's been there's racisms in many forms, and I said I feel that I've been somewhat privileged by my skin color, but that doesn't mean that somebody else who's also white feels the same way.
But you know what? Interesting that you said that, and I have heard that from many people. So I tell them, define racism. One thing is me as a black man say, look, I don't want my son to marry a white woman. That does not necessarily mean it's a racist statement. Maybe I want to keep, allow me, maybe it's a culture matter. Maybe I want keep my culture. Or if a white person tells me the same thing, well, I don't want to marry a black person because I want to keep my culture. You're proud of being black, I'm proud of being white. I can dig that. But when one race oppresses the other race and tells them, no, you cannot work here because you're black, you cannot walk on that side because you're black, now it's racism. So how often have you seen a black person doing that?
Yeah, I'm gonna counter that a little bit.
Please.
It's those are the overt kind of racism. The really dangerous racism is the subversive racism, the ones that you can't see. And I'm not claiming that black people are racist against white people or control white people. That's not the point of my statement. I'm saying when you judge somebody by their skin color and not the content of their character, then that person, you're making racist judgments against somebody. Again, it may or may not put somebody at a disadvantage. but it's racist nonetheless.
Now let's get back to Yonkers, because we're moving a little bit.
All right, yeah, I don't want to get too...
But that's
I will, so I marched last year in the Juneteenth March. I think that Councilman Williams arranged that. Just
okay. Now, before we go further, I need to shout out to our sponsor, Dos Marias, 200 New Main Street. Fabulous Mexican restaurant. This is the best Mexican restaurant in Yonkers, Westchester County, probably New York State. Great food, great drinks, an ambience that it's second to none. So guys, come on down. Tuesday tacos, it's the best. Okay, come over here, mix and mingle. Don't forget, bring your masks, even though the place is very much divided because they are thinking of your safety, but a little bit of an extra precaution is great. Right now, we don't have our masks on because we both been vaccinated, okay?
Yes.
We both been vaccinated, so that's why we don't have the masks on. But if you have not been vaccinated and you decide to come over here, bring your mask, even though places are all divided. But if you feel like it's still not safe enough to come, call them up and order your Mexican food online, Uber, or just come pick it up and leave. The food's still great, you're still gonna love it, and just come down and utilize our local businesses. It's been a very hard time, so let's give a lending hand.
And I'm impressed by how clean it is in here.
Extremely clean,
Yes,
right?
Very clean.
Extremely clean. Now, let's talk about bail reform. Bail reform had been the cause, according to many, of repetitive crimes. The same people are doing the same crimes over and over. Give an example. A teenager is caught with a weapon, is arrested. A few hours later, the next day, he's out on the street. 2 weeks later, he's arrested for exactly the same thing. And then he's let go, and maybe a month later, the very same thing. And those guns are not there with them for good looks. A weapon is there to be used if necessary. How do you see bail reform?
Well, I think bail reform was a mistake. The legislature and assembly, the Senate and assembly, met well in trying to institute bail reform. But I really feel that it was a mistake because we do have people who are violent offenders, and the judges really don't have the discretion to keep them behind bars. And granted, bail is not punishment. Bail is meant to keep somebody, to make sure that they show up. But often it does keep criminals off the street.
Now, this is what Actor Santiago says, because we have to take the critics, and the support as well. This is what he says, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer them, because what he say might be what other people are saying. Actor says, "I will not be voting for Ron. However, I have lots of respect after getting to know him a little in this interview. His racial lens is respected. Would love to link up with him sometime for some conversation and potential community involvement."
Well, I've been a fan of Hector for about 2 years. I followed him on Twitter a while back, and I would welcome the opportunity to meet him and learn. Part of what I'm doing in this campaign is I'm also learning about what people's needs are. I have a Zoom meeting tonight, and if you want to invite to the Zoom meeting, you can email Ron at ronforyonkers.com. I'll send you the Zoom link, and it's basically my listening tour. Every 2 weeks, I'm hosting a Zoom meeting so I can learn what people who haven't had the same experience that I have need in Yonkers.
Now, Maddie DeMarie Chitan Walker. Maddie, if I'm saying your name wrong, I apologize. I have a thick accent, so I'm sorry. She says that we should have a meet and greet experience with you, like a meet your candidate, which is a good, it's a good suggestion. But now with this COVID-19 situation, I don't know if that is the right thing to do, or maybe people take temperatures before they walk in. I don't know.
And that's why I'm hosting some Zoom meetings. Again, if you email Ron at ronforyonkers.com, I'll send you a link. Nothing's recorded. We just have an open dialogue, and it's mostly for me to find out about you and you to find out about me.
If you were a person from the street and you were asking that person, why should you vote for Ron? What would the answer be? Why should I vote for Ron?
So if you look at the current makeup of the council, you've got two business owners, Mike and John, Mike Green and John Ru Ros. Anthony's also a business owner. Anthony Moranti, he's got some businesses as well. Tasha does a great job as a community activist. Shanae has her expertise, and you don't have somebody on with large organizational experience. So I can connect with somebody, again, like Tom Meyer or Anthony Landry, who have large organizations, understand what's needed in those organizations, and look for efficiencies within those organizations. Again, everyone complains about large overtime in Yonkers and how some of these people are making incredible amounts of overtime. That's not the fault of the employee, that's the fault of the manager. And that's putting in some checks and balances in order to make sure that the manager is actually managing their staff. Those are the experiences that I have that I can bring to the council, and the insight that I have to bring to the council.
I don't know if I would agree totally with you. Look, let's talk about police department for a minute and the fire department. Two organizations, first responders. They have a certain amount of manpower. They are already understaffed, as the organization is. We need more police officers on the street. We don't have enough. Now, injuries do happen, sickness do happen, and now they need to cover those spots due to this or due to that. What other way but overtime could they do it?
So again, taking a look at the overall budget, if you look at a position like a police officer or a firefighter, about 65%, let's assume a police officer makes $100 an hour. You've got to add $65 onto that to cover all the benefits, pensions, and everything else. So sometimes it makes sense to use overtime. Sometimes it makes sense to hire additional staff and to ensure that overtime is not gratuitous. I'm not saying that there's gratuitous overtime. I'm saying you have to look at how you manage the overtime and take the data and understand where the overtime is going. If you don't record those things, you have no idea where the overtime is going. So there's a program that came out in Baltimore over a decade ago and then moved to Maryland. The mayor, Martin O'Malley, also became governor of Maryland. He put something together called CityStat, much like CompStat for the police department, but it was taking a look at overtime, taking a look at benefit time, taking a look at whether you had the right amount of police officers in the right spot. Those are all things that Yonkers should have done.
Now let's talk about retirement for police officers that retire and fire department that retire. Again, I talk to lots of people and they tell me those retirements that are something out of this world. To me, I think that, look, they risk their lives, they spend 20 years, give it to them. Others might disagree and say, no, there is no way. They chose that life, that was the job, so they risk it, but because they wanted to, okay? But those retirements, excessive retirements, is what really is hurting Yonkers. What's your point on that?
So those retirements are covered by the state pension fund. Many of the police officers retiring now are in tier 4. There's a new tier 6, and that overtime does not get added to the retirement in Tier 6. I happened to work for City University of New York before starting this campaign, and I was in a Tier 6 retirement, which meant had I been in a position where I could work overtime, it would not count towards my retirement.
Now let's talk about minorities inside the police department. Okay? But I wanted to make it clear that YPD is doing all they can to get minorities within the police department. Actually, there is a class going on now that prepares them for the police test that is coming in September. And the focus was getting minorities in those tests, in those classes. So some people say, no, that's not true. The police don't want blacks in there. And I said, no, that's not true. Maybe blacks don't want to join the police department. So we need to do something to change mindsets. What could you say to the minority community in Yonkers about joining the Yonkers Police Department, of becoming the change that you want to see?
Well, so if you look at New York City, they had a very successful program. I don't know if they still have it, but it was called the Cadet Program. And they helped fund college tuitions by a certain amount of hours by these police cadets who would learn under the police officers, and they'd be assigned to precincts to do sometimes menial work, sometimes not so menial. But it was a income for a student who was looking to go to college, and it did capture a lot of minority students into that program.
So we have to conclude this sooner or later, but I didn't want to finish this interview without talking about the school budget. Okay, we have Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousin, Senator Shelley Myers, we have Assemblyman Nathan Saez, and we have a mayor's panel, a whole bunch of people talking and working on us Yonkers getting a better funded budget to help the school, the Yonkers public schools. What would you do if you were elected council president in the city of Yonkers? What would you do to add to get a better budget to our schools?
So it's as much about revenue as it is about expenses. So when you're talking about a budget, you also have to manage your expenses. I'm not sure that the school budget is properly managed. As you remember, in 2015, we had an issue where whoever was managing the budget booked grant revenue of $26 million for 2 years straight in a row, and we wound up with a $55 million hole in the school budget. And Governor Cuomo had to come and save us with that. And that meant a lot of concessions on the part of Yonkers in order to get that funding. At the time, the school board, Yonkers School Public Schools did not have an assistant superintendent for business. I still believe that Yonkers doesn't have an assistant superintendent for business. In order to be an assistant superintendent for business or be a business manager in New York State, you have to take about 21 credits. You have to pass a civil service exam. And I don't think that the district has anybody in that spot right now. I happen to be certified as a school business manager in Connecticut, so I know a little bit about school budgets. I don't think we're managing the expense side of the budget. You're right, we don't get the revenue that we deserve from New York State, and nobody's gotten the revenue that they deserve from New York State since the 2000s. But part of it is managing where the money goes, as well as where the money comes from.
So there is no misunderstanding. You are saying that the issue with the formula is not just the money that we get to Yonkers, but also bad management.
How we spend it. Look, we had to write a bond. Yonkers wrote a bond for $5 million to buy textbooks. Textbooks is a consumable. Maybe it's a 10-year or 5-year consumable, but you don't write a bond. We wrote that bond. The taxpayer is going to pay that bond. If you go back and look at any grant revenue that the school district gets, we write the bond for that grant, and then the revenue from that grant that comes from the state goes back into the school district with no accountability to the city of Yonkers. So right now, the city of Yonkers is carrying the school district, and I think there needs to be, Mayor Spano started a municipal agreement, intermunicipal agreement between the school board and Yonkers. I think there needs to be a little more connection in that, and we need to get a proper school business manager.
Now, have you spoken to Mayor Spano lately?
No, Mayor Spano, aside from meeting him at the Yonkers School Construction Board, we don't really meet for coffee.
Gotcha.
I will say I'm not a Yonkers insider. Most of you don't know my name. I don't have any friends that are looking for jobs in Yonkers.
Oh shucks, I was going to ask you for one.
It's just my wife and I, so there are no kids to get jobs in Yonkers. I also don't advocate all of the take-home cars. I would like to see, if you have a car, if you have a take-home car, you should be responding to bona fide emergencies. There's no reason for the council people to have take-home cars. There's no reason for anybody, unless they're going to go at 11 o'clock at night, to deal with an emergency. I can see the director of school facilities, perhaps the commissioner of public works, and a few other people, but not the amount of cars that we currently have.
Well, but you know that emergencies do happen, and lots of these council people and people that have city cars, they can be called at any time for any type of emergency. So
I'm going to ask you, what benefit does a council person at an emergency bring? And again, if I have to go somewhere, I can go to the pool, grab the car from the city garage, and then take it to the spot. If you have a take-home car, or you take your car to work in White Plains, you're putting the whole city at risk. You have an accident, that's a lawsuit against the city. So it's not just about the gas, the repairs, and the wear and tear on the car, it's also about the risk to the city.
Well, Ron, we have to conclude, but I don't want to conclude by me giving the closing, the closing remarks. I want you to do the closing remarks. If there is anything that I forgot to ask you that you think it's important for the people of Yonkers to know about you, this is it. This is your opportunity.
All right. Well, look, I thank you all for listening and participating. This is my first interview. I'm not a politician, although I guess I am one now. And I want to do something good for the city of Yonkers is why I'm running. I think I can. This is a part-time job. I understand that. I understand it's only one vote on the council. But I think I bring experience, I've got education, and I've got some heart to bring back to this city. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I grew up on Valentine Lane. Both my parents worked. My mother cleaned houses for a living in order to support a family after my father had a stroke. So I know a little bit about what it is to struggle and to hope that you'll get through the month. I've been fortunate, and I want to share that.
Well, Ron, thank you very much for taking the time. And anytime you need to speak with the people of Yonkers, there is no better place than Yonkers Voice. We reach out most people in Yonkers. We are a very huge platform, and every candidate, regardless of their political inclination, they are welcome on Yonkers Voice. We are here for the people. We have no political inclination ourselves. Personally, I have one. But when it comes to Yonkers Voice, the page, the organization, we give the same respect regardless if you are Republican, Democrat, or whatever. We are here for you. So they can speak on what they believe in. They can speak about why you should vote for them. And then at the end of the day, it's up to you to cast your vote and make that decision. That's our platform.
And if you want to meet me personally, we can do that on Zoom and be safe. Just email me at ron@ronforyonkers.com. I'll send you a link, and we can have a chance to have a dialogue.
And if you are running for a political position in the city of Yonkers or surrounding cities or county or state, reach out to us, yv.support@yonkersvoice.com. Send us a short bio, send us a palm card, and then let's set up that meeting where you can speak and the people of Yonkers will hear. Thank you, and until next time.